Hello and welcome to Pet Talk with me and Teddy. Teddy is saying hello. Hello to our wonderful guest, Amber Batson. Hello, Amber.
Hi.
Thank you so much for joining us on Pet Talk again. And particularly because this is a time of year that we all know can be extremely stressful to many dogs. And of course, we're talking about fireworks.
Yes, absolutely. A scary time, isn't it? Both for owners and pets. And let's not forget the cats, the rabbits, the horses too. So often affected by fireworks. Exactly. So delighted to have a chat with you about it, to try and help as many dogs and other animals as we can leading up to the next few weeks of noise.
So to start off, perhaps it might be worth understanding why it is that some animals seem fine with it and some aren't.
Well, it's a really good question. And I don't think we always know exactly the answer, but there are a number of reasons why an individual might find them scary. You know, it can be that when they were young, they never got used to certain kinds of noises. And the first time they happened to hear these really intense, loud sounds, which we must remember, when we hear a firework, it doesn't sound the same to us as it does to other animals, because other animals have got hearing outside our range of hearing. So it may sound kind of the pitch, even the volume potentially might sound different to different animals. So maybe they've not heard that sort of intensity of sound, that type of pitch of sound before. And if it happens at a time when they're an adolescent and they're going through a bit of a kind of reactive, scary time anyway, or they're still in puppyhood, or if it happens at a time when they've got some pain in their body, you know, maybe they've got an ear infection, maybe they've hurt their neck a bit out on a walk. As they tense and they hear the sound, that can trigger a real pain response, because obviously you know yourself, if you've hurt your neck and then you jump, oh gosh, it hurts. So if they've got some pain in their body and this is one of the first times they hear that and then react, then they're going to make an association with loud noises and pain. You know, so loud noises can be scary, loud noises can even be painful, and with younger animals in particular, we see it with children a lot as well. Children are way more sensitive to loud noises. You wouldn't take your child to an adult fireworks display, or you shouldn't, without putting ear protection on them. Yeah, because we know that the intensity of the sound is picked up easier by that developing ear. So when we think about young dogs, puppies, adolescents, maybe, you know, they hear it even greater than older dogs. But interestingly, one study did show that when they did a review of lots and lots of dogs in particular that were fearful of fireworks, that actually the majority of them hadn't shown a problem as puppies, as young dogs. You know, some had, definitely, but the majority had actually started to develop it as adults. And that led on to an investigation of those adults, and a lot of those adults were found to have some pain somewhere in their body. You know, and one of the other things that we know can affect our fear responses too is our gut health. So if our gut isn't healthy, then that affects the bugs that are in our gut. The bugs produce chemicals which influence our brain's reactions. And I know that might sound crazy, but it's a truth. So if we're in a period where our guts aren't particularly healthy, when we hear those loud noises, it may be another sort of underlying reason why an individual becomes sensitive to it. You know, so lots of reasons, and you know, but equally at the same time, they all have the same sort of outcome, which ultimately is a fear, whether it's fear of pain or a fear of a weird sensation, or just a fear because I've never heard that before. We are getting the same fear response out of the majority of them.
But you know, I hadn't even thought about the association of actual physical pain with the noise, but it makes so much sense that if you're experiencing pain in a particular moment, and that then is coupled with this huge bang, that there's then an association that's built. And you know, the thing that's always concerned me is this prospect that it's so random, that your dog could be fine and then suddenly at the age of 7 he's not, and that's that's made me very conscious of this, because thankfully, touch wood, Teddy to this day has been fine with fireworks. You know, he's not fine with lots of other things, like car doors slamming in front of the house. He's not fine about that. He hates it. But fireworks, thankfully, to date have been fine. But I'm always conscious that that could change at any moment, and I don't know why. So now you've given me a good idea. So what would you suggest we do to help those who are already suffering? Teddy's friends, I've got several of his friends who are absolutely petrified during, you know, firework nights, etc. So what would you recommend?
Yeah, and I think so. It's a separate discussion, isn't it? Kind of fixing them, you know, trying to resolve it for the future. And now, when we're in weeks heading into, in the United Kingdom at least anyway, you know, and many parts of Europe, we're maybe a week off the majority of fireworks displays starting. And you know, we're not going to be able to fix those problems now. So it's how do we get through this period of time? And then I absolutely urge you, and I'm sure I'll come back to it later, please then don't just forget about it all until, you know, sometime after New Year, where you now think, oh, I've got 8 or 9 months without worrying about it again, because that's the time when we do have the opportunity to really do something about it. So kind of I think there are 2 things that we need to consider really. There's kind of the preparation, you know, kind of now, what can we be doing now, today, when there's no fireworks happening that would start helping get ready. And then there's what can we do when the bangs themselves actually start, or on an evening when you know there's going to be a fireworks display. There's those 2 elements, aren't there, really? So one thing that we can do now, very first thing that I need everybody to do is to make sure your microchip details are up to date. Yeah, so your dog by law in the United Kingdom has to have a microchip. Make sure that, you know, you can access your data online, or call the company, contact the company, check your details up to date. So common in veterinary practice that we as vets and nurses and staff get people bringing in animals that have been found, and we scan them, we find a chip, and then the phone number doesn't work and there's no email attached to it, you know. And so if our dog or cat, you know, gets scared, or even horse gets scared, you know, during fireworks, and they escape, we've got a better opportunity of getting them back, you know. So that's really important. And secondly then is, if you have an animal with an intense fear response, go and speak to your vet now. Don't delay any longer, because even with COVID-19 still around and complications in veterinary practice, because of everyone being so busy, it may well be that they would like you to bring the animal in for a weight check and to check their heart, because later on we'll talk about medicines briefly, and you know, there are a lot of medicines that we could give that might mean that we want to make sure their heart and their circulation system is functioning properly before we dispense that medicine. You know, so if you've got an animal that you know has a really, really tough time, please don't think, you know, oh yeah, but I don't want to give them drugs. And I will talk about drugs when we talk about fireworks night itself, as to why they're helpful. It's not just about doping them so that they don't, you know, recognize them, or making them immobile and yet they're still scared. We've got lots and lots of medicines now which work in very different ways. They reduce the fear response in the brain, and you know, a couple of studies which are showing, you know, that these animals do produce less stress chemistry, their heart rate's more stable. So, you know, they can be really, really beneficial. So, you know, check your chip, and if you've got an animal with a more intense fear as you perceive it, then please contact your vet now and see if you need an appointment to get a weight check and a heart check before they'd consider sending you any or dispensing you any medicine. Then it's about routine, really. You know, now is a good time to start making some routine changes to make sure that a routine change on the night isn't a source of stress in its own right. You know, a lot of animals do start to get a bit wary around this time if they've had a history of fireworks issues, because they know the day's shortening means the thing that this is likely to happen. Animals are that good at looking for predictors, you know, so let's make sure that we don't kind of create stress by suddenly changing a routine. Think about just shifting your walk a little bit earlier in the day, you know, or maybe if you can, changing your walk time so that it's a lot earlier in the day, and instead of going for a walk when you get home from work, perhaps at 5, 6 o'clock, what you're actually going to do is do some puzzle toys with them in the house, you know, and then you could always, if necessary, go for another walk much later in the evening, which on a fireworks night you may have to skip, you know, depending on the display that's near you. But just start making that shift now. Just start walking them maybe 15 minutes earlier than normal if you can, or taking them at lunchtime if you work till later, and then doing some puzzle toys or something in the evening. Puzzle toys, and so this is going to be one of my things about the night, but what we want is we want dogs to be in a calm state before the fireworks start. So some people sometimes think it's a good idea to go and take their dog for an intense, fast exercise before the fireworks to tire them out. But actually we know that the chemicals and hormones that animals produce in fast exercise are stress chemistry that switch on the reactivity of the brain. So actually the concept of tiring them out probably isn't going to help. Yeah. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that walk that we're doing now leading up to fireworks becomes a lot more sniffy, a lot more relaxed. Yeah. And it doesn't mean to say if they want to run around, it doesn't mean to say you can't let them off their lead and they can have, you know, some bursts of activity, but don't go out with the intention of exhausting them. You know, don't go to the dog park and ball throw and ball throw and ball throw, or meet up with other dogs that you know they charge around for 20, 30 minutes, or take them jogging or cycling. You know, by all means, take them somewhere where you can let them off. And if they want to have a bit of a faster run around, that's voluntary and their choice. But then encourage them then after that, after 5, 10 minutes of that, to, hey, let's walk by some trees. Let's walk by some lampposts. Let's walk by down a different street, so that there's lots and lots of interesting sniffy things for them to do. Because what we want is we want them to come home full of calmer chemicals, not full of stressful excitatory chemicals. Does that sound reasonable?
Yeah, absolutely. Because the last thing you want, what you want is you want your dog to be soothed and calm, because they're going to start pumping adrenaline the minute those fireworks go off. Yeah. So you don't want them already hyped up on adrenaline coming in. So it makes complete sense that you would do. And you said, you know, lots of sniffing, which we know is a very calming thing for dogs. So perhaps, you know, take a few little treats for them to find while they're out, you know, encouraging them to forage would be much better than ball throwing, because that hypes them up. It's the adrenaline, the excitement again. So yes, that makes complete sense. That sounds really good. Is there? I
understand why people think that, though. I just want to say, if people have been doing that before, if you have gone out and you've been ball throwing or doing fast exercise with the intent of tiring your dog out, then, you know, or horse, of course, as well. Some people will lunge their horse intensely before fireworks because they think that might actually make them more sleepy. You know, it's just once you've got that information and you have that understanding, it can change how we do. We've all been there. We've all done those sorts of things. I've done it myself. You know, so it's not a judgment, it's just we have this knowledge now. We know those kinds of intense exercise for animals like dogs and horses cause that stress chemistry release, which includes adrenaline, also includes cortisol and other stress chemicals that last longer in the body. They can last hours for animals. So if they're already full of them by the time they come home from their exercise or back to the yard from their exercise, that's going to just perpetuate, make it easier for those levels to rise when the first firework goes off.
Is there anything that we can do for cats in preparation as well?
Yeah, so again, the same thing with cats. If we think about the routine change, what we might want to start doing now is 2 things really importantly. We might want to start calling them in a little bit earlier for a tasty meal, you know, a little bit of chicken, a little bit of fish, you know, just a spoonful, so that they want to come in, you know, at the time that's ready, so that on the nights you're not panicking, cat's not back in yet. Get them used to coming in and make it worth their while. It's going to be tasty, it's going to be yummy, and we're going to actually shut the cat flap, you know, for an hour or two in preparation. Maybe in a week still leading up, depends when you launch this, when this video, but if we are several days, maybe you don't have to start locking them in for hours and hours on those first few nights, but at least get them to come in, have something yummy, stay in for an hour or two, and then let them back out. Because on the night before, the night of the nearest displays to you, you're definitely going to want to call them in, and then you're going to want to shut the cat flap. You want to make sure all your windows are shut, of course, because otherwise cats will find a way out somewhere else as well. And you might also want to think about a litter tray, because for a lot of owners, depending on where you are with the display, you might be thinking about calling your cat in at 4 o'clock, ready in preparation, maybe even a bit earlier for some of us. And then maybe you're not going to be able to let them back out, because maybe the fireworks are going to go on till 11 or 12 o'clock. And so they're going to need access to the loo. So put a litter tray somewhere. And if your cat's not used to using a litter tray, then you might be better off actually putting some soil in it rather than cat litter. And I know that sounds a bit crazy, but it's about, what does your cat normally go to the toilet on? If you suddenly expect your cat to use kind of, shredded paper or clay pellets or something like that, wood pellets, and they've not used that, since they were tiny or ever, then they're probably not going to want to use it. But actually soil from outside, they're far more likely to be inclined. And you might want to think about where to put that as well. And I'm afraid that's quite variable cat to cat, but probably not by the back door, actually, because if it's noisy outside, they're probably not going to want to go to that place to go to the loo. They're probably more likely to want to go somewhere quiet, so it's just important that maybe it's in a room where you are all going to sit together and it's in a quiet place, kind of near when not too much is going to be happening. So some good things you can do for the cat. And of course there are medicines for cats too. We've got a cat that's really terrified. So the whole thing about check the chip, if they're chipped, if they're not, should they be chipped? Yes, probably. Maybe get them checked by the vet if necessary, so that we can think about using medicine for them as well. And in preparation for that, my top tip with owners giving cats medicine is to go to a supermarket and buy, you can get little glass jars of paste. It's called sandwich paste quite often. It's a very sticky meat, fish paste. Just check it's got no onion in it. I don't hardly ever come across any that have onion in, but we mustn't give onion to cats. And why do I like that more than pate or butter or cream cheese? Because as far as I'm concerned, it's one of the stickiest substrates known to man, basically. So what I say to cat owners is get one of these, and you can keep it in the fridge and it lasts quite a while. Just take out a pea-sized amount and put it on, not on their bowl, but on a plate or a mat or something as a treat. And you'll find that they'll sniff it, they'll lick it, and maybe they'll like it. It'll stick to their tongue, they'll probably eat it. Practice that a few days in a row, just 1 or 2 treats per day on their mat, or on a plate separate to their bowl, so that they think that this is a great treat. And then once they've practiced it a few times, when you need to give them medicine, and this is relevant whether it's a cat wormer or medicine for a disease, or it's medicine as an anti-anxiety for fireworks, what you can do is you can take 2 pea-sized amounts, and you give them the first one, which is just their normal treat, and then you give a second one, which is coating the tablet, and you just put it on their plate or their mat exactly like you do. And because they're expecting to take this thing, which they know is sticky, so they just tend to pick it up and swallow it really quickly, then they probably won't notice the medicines there. So many owners over the years who've come to me and said, there's no way my cat's going to take tablets. I would say 95% of owners, I have been able to get their cats to take tablets like that. There are still a small percentage that we can't, but the majority will. And that's something you can practice now, whether you're going to use medicine for fireworks or whether you just want to do that for something like worming in the future. Once they've got good at it, you only need to do it once a week. Just have a practice once a week, so that they always have in their mind, or when that treat comes out on that plate, I should just pick it up and swallow it without thinking about it, because otherwise it's really sticky, and that's a really good thing you can do for cats. So, I think that's just covered all the kind of basics for preparing for cats, really.
And actually, one of the important things about doing this with cats is if your cat is used to being able to roam whenever it wants to, getting it used to the idea that actually they're not going to go straight out after they've eaten.
Exactly.
It gives them time to get used to that idea. Because the last thing you want is to have them upset with fireworks going on. Because now they're upset about two things. They feel trapped indoors, and outside sounds like a war zone. So it's a terrible predicament, for everyone to be in.
So it's a good idea sometimes when they've come in and they've had their tasty thing, you can do a little treat hunt, in the house for cats. You can get dried bits of fish or chicken or other things that your cat likes and hide little bits and say hide, in case the cat doesn't find them, put them places where you've put them, or you have a dog to clear up after them maybe. But or some just real simple little puzzles, drop a few of their favorite treats in some scrunched up pieces of recycling. Or toilet rolls, take a toilet roll and put one in the middle and then just pinch the ends a little bit. Or get a box, and put lots of toilet rolls in it, and maybe cut some of them in half and drop little tiny bits in a few of them, so the cat's got to put their paw in to fish them out. So if they get used to this idea that they come in for their tasty thing, they notice that the cat flap is shut, but now they're going to do something fun like a treasure hunt or puzzles, then they're not so frustrated that they can't go out immediately afterwards. And absolutely, that makes a big difference. For cats, obviously, cats are different to dogs, and when cats get really scared, they want to go up. They are what we call a vertical flight animal, because in the wild they will go up trees, as we've all heard. So think about where has your cat got where they can get up easily onto. And of course, as cats get older, as soon as they're over the age of 3, 4, 5 years of age, a lot of cats have got some degree of arthritis, even if you don't know about it. It's really common. And cats have to work quite hard sometimes to get up onto things that they used to find super easy. And they can do it, but it might be uncomfortable for them, or it might be a bit stressful for them. So think about, can they hop up onto a little table before they hop up onto the top of the wardrobe or the back of the sofa? Make sure it's made easy for them and that they've got a choice. And a really easy thing to do because you don't have this interaction with your cat the rest of the year, is just get a big cardboard box and cut a hole in it, a U shape in it, and cover it with a towel so it doesn't move quite as easily. And then if they want to go into something to hide, you've got a ready-made hidey place for them without spending hardly any money at all. Hopefully it was free, and you can put that somewhere so that they've got something to hide in, but it wants to be up, and whereas dogs are different. Some dogs want to go up when they're scared. They remember that part of their evolution too. And they do want to go up. That's why some dogs want to go on the back of the sofa. They want to climb up on you. They want to be up on the bed. So we want to provide them with some elevated surfaces, but it's not going to be the same height as our cats. Cats really want to be right up, whereas dogs tend to be kind of middle of the room. And so there's this thing about this myth. Is it a myth? Is it not a myth about dens and dogs? And absolutely, when we look at most free-ranging studies, most dogs don't den. They only den when they're giving birth to puppies, that they create themselves a little kind of confined space. But that doesn't mean to say when they're really, really scared that they don't want to go and stick their head in something and hide away. That's a different thing. They might not den on a daily basis for sleeping and shelter, but they might want to hide in something when they're scared. Different dogs have different strategies, just like humans. Some want to be up, and really, really vigilant. Some want to go under and close their eyes and hide. And some of them just want to keep moving. They just want to keep pacing and pacing and pacing. And so it's very much about know your dog and allow them choices. And certainly don't restrict their choices. Don't think, oh, well, I know they like to hide. What I'll do is I'll shut them in. By all means, provide the thing that you think they want to hide in. You sit near it, but leave the door open. Leave the space open for them, whether it's you've covered the coffee table, whether it's a crate, whether it's under your bed. If they want to go under, they're fine, but let's not shut them in that space, because sometimes actually they want to come out and just check everything out. And now maybe they want to go up on something, so just make sure we bear that in mind with our dogs.
It was interesting. You said, give them what they want, but then be with them. This is not a night to go out, is it? And leaving them in.
No, exactly. And I know that's tricky because many of us want to go out and watch the fireworks, but if we've got a dog who we know is going to be fearful of fireworks, then then we've got two options. What we can do, two options with dogs, we can stay home with them, and that can be brilliant. But you know what works brilliant for some dog owners is we put them in a car and we drive, because sometimes being in the house where it's so loud, if you're close to a display, can be really, really awful. Whereas if your dog's actually okay about travel, putting them into their travel space, the boot of the car or whatever it's that's safe for them when they're traveling by law, and driving away might give you the opportunity to actually enjoy the sight of the fireworks, because you can park up somewhere miles away on a hill where you can see all these beautiful fireworks, but you can't hear anything, and you can have the radio on in the car, which just masks any kind of in the distance pops as well. And I know if you live in a city, maybe that can be a little bit harder than if you live on the periphery of a city or a town or rurally. But it's just something to consider that works really, really well for some people, and gives the people the opportunity to see the beautiful fireworks, without actually, losing out on that. So we might want to stay home with our dogs. A lot of us probably will want to do that, but some of us might want to go out with our dog. And there's absolutely no reason not to do that. Just remember safety. What you don't want to be doing is coming out and your neighbor set off a display. So make sure your dog is securely on a long line that you've got hold of when you go to your car. If you're going to travel them on the night of fireworks, we do need to be super careful about that, obviously. It's just for some people, if they live near a loud display, driving away from it for those 2 or 3 hours can be a much better thing to do. Maybe think about, can you go and visit someone who's an hour's drive away who doesn't have a display near them, or something along those lines. But yeah, absolutely. We want to, social contact is really important. So when we go back to preparing, another thing that you can start doing over the next week or so is you've made your walk a bit earlier, or you've been doing your puzzle toys, and then if your dog likes it, just sit down on the floor and do a little bit of gentle scratching, a little bit of stroking, or a bit of grooming, or perhaps even just a gentle bit of very superficial light massage. Doesn't matter, you don't know what you're doing, as long as they enjoy it. If they enjoy that kind of touch, then do that for them. If they enjoy being rubbed off by a towel, get a towel, lay it over their back and just rub the towel a little bit. Now, if that makes them go crazy because they grab the towel and start bouncing around, that's not what we want. What we want is a social interaction between you and the dog to boost a really, really valuable anti-stress hormone in the body called oxytocin. If we can load the body with oxytocin before the fireworks start, then actually that will help bring their stress levels down a lot more. Well, at least we hope so anyway. It has the potential to do that. So have a bit of a bonding exercise, every night leading up to the event for 5, 10, 15 minutes. And as that finishes, if you need to get on with your cooking, you need to get on with something else, make it a positive thing as it finishes. Drop a few treats on the floor, give them their favorite toy to play with, give them a chew, give them a lick mat, so that you removing your attention isn't a negative for them. We want them to keep thinking this is positive going towards fireworks. Or if you've got the time, then just sit with them and then let them decide where they want to be. Do they want to lie on your lap? Do they want to lie near you? Do they want to go to their own space? So you get an idea on the night what they're likely to want to do, but you're still there for them. One of the biggest myths that we're finally getting rid of in the dog world is that, the myth is, don't reassure a fearful animal because you're reinforcing their fear, which is nonsense, and again, and I don't mean that in a judgmental way. I've been there too. I was taught that 25, 30 years ago. I believe that too, but we know it's not true, and it's based on the way that our chemistry and our body works. If you are fearful and you have someone who's familiar to you, your human caregiver, and they are present when something scary's happened, we know that the fear and stress response is actually lower in that individual, not greater. So you're not making the fear worse. You're not making the barking worse, the pacing worse, the digging behaviors worse. Even if they don't get better, you're not making them worse. So just be there as an option. That's the important thing, so that, you know, the dog knows that they can come to you, or that they do enjoy this massage every night, and we're going to do it, because social contact really, really matters.
You were talking about puzzle games earlier. Is that something that might be beneficial to some dogs? Because I know that if they're very afraid, it's less likely they're going to want to engage. It's harder to distract them once they get over a certain threshold of fear.
Absolutely.
But if you have a dog that's just mildly uncomfortable, I think that might be helpful. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. So on the night itself, so the things we've done in preparation, we're preparing for the night by shifting our walking pattern or our cat coming in pattern, you know, or and as well, you know, then we're just thinking about doing some calmer exercise, calmer activities that are pleasurable but calm with them. And hopefully, you know, cat or dog, then we're providing them with an additional bit of social contact each evening leading up to the event. But on the night of the event itself, it's unlikely for the majority of dogs that they are going to be distracted by something. Even their most favorite toy or chew or yummy thing is going to be put in a box by their brain, because their brain says, I've got to pay attention to this scary stuff. You know, so when we're doing this preparation and we're doing some puzzle solving, etc., it's to get them used to that routine, so that on that night they approach that night of the display already in that calm state. If they are of an individual who still wants to do the puzzle solving or the chew or the lick mat while the display's on, brilliant. If they don't want to do that thing, if they take one look at it and you can see they're a bit more tense, their ears are a little bit further back, their tail's a bit more lowered, whatever it is that your dog starts to display when they're in the earlier stages of fear, then you can leave it out, but we're not trying to give it to them, because it's not going to work. It's like when they come to the vets, the majority of dogs won't actually take treats, you know, or cats. Cats take treats at the vets. Yeah, they do. But, you know, a lot of them don't, because their fear is too high. And partly it's because the brain goes into this situation where it shifts when it thinks it needs to run away or hide, and it's got to deal with fear. It moves the blood that's around the gut into the muscles. So in fact, the brain is told by the gut, don't eat, because we don't want food sitting in our gut that we can't do anything with that food. It's not healthy. It's not good for us. So there is a switch off of appetite for a lot of animals when, like you say, when they cross a threshold of fear. You know, now we're into talking to them quietly, stroking them if they want to be stroked. We're not trying to restrain them. We're not trying to hug them. We're not trying to scratch them, you know, in a way that they will calm down. You know, it's just providing our reassurance. We're here. And sometimes sitting on the floor is a better place than on a chair. But if your dog likes to get on the chair and be next to you, then that's fantastic. Now, you know, it's up to your dog or your cat where they would like to be, and provide your reassurance. If you've got an animal who actually seems to want to hide away from you, then maybe just think about putting an item of clothing that you've worn at a calm time, you know, like your pajama top that you sleep in, or a jumper that you tend to wear when you snuggle down for a night, rather than your gym clothes, which are full of sweat and adrenaline and are picked up by animals. Calm state clothing can be just put near where they are, so that at least they have got your smell there as well. You know, and then that gives them a little bit more choice. If they want to move away from it, they can. They want to be near it, they can, even if they don't want to be by us. You know, and why might they not want to be by us? Well, maybe sometimes they're a bit nervous because of things we've done in the past. Maybe just for some individuals, they just want to be by themselves, so they can focus on themselves and their response to this scary noise. Some of us are like that, aren't we? You know, we just feel a little bit like, I want to know you're here, but I want my own space. And it's that difference between where am I within my space, so that I know how I can respond if I want to. I have choice, you know, and that's so important to them.
So we have some idea about what to do about dogs on the night and cats on the night. What about horses?
Yeah, horses are very variable, I think. I mean, obviously, one of the first things you want to do, whether you're a dog, cat, or horse owner, is to check out your local displays. You know, find out when the big ones are going to be, so that at least you're prepared for that particular, you know, night. The laws are a little bit more considerate perhaps of horses, although how well that gets followed through can vary from kind of county to county, certainly in the UK. In that, you know, people aren't actually supposed to hold displays directly next to livestock, and horses fall into that category. You know, so check out where your displays are, and they're certainly supposed to let any livestock owners know, so they have the potential of moving them to a different field, etc. It's a bit harder if you have horses, you know, you've only got maybe a couple of stables or a barn and a shelter and a paddock. You can't move them like a farmer might be able to the other side of the farm. But check out where your local displays are, what nights, what times they're going to start, so that you are more prepared for those bigger evenings. Check out with your neighbours, you know, whether you're in a house or whether you're a yard with a horse or a field, check out with the people around them. You know, now is a really good time to pop notes through the door with your mobile number on, something like that. Please let me know if you're going to have fireworks, so that I can be there for my horse. And then what you might want to be doing, again, if you know your horse has had really strong responses, there are anti-fear medicines for horses too. So you might want to talk to your equine vet about that in advance if necessary. But again, think about, what does your horse tend to do and what's going to be safest? So some horses are better off out in fields, because actually they like to be in the middle of an open space, and they'll stand quite still and, you know, observe, and being able to make choices makes them feel better. But some horses, when they're in a big space like that, will just gallop through anything, you know, and I've had horses that have run through fences and gates and cut themselves open terribly in things like fireworks. So if that's the situation, obviously leaving them in a field where they might break through a gate or fencing is not going to be appropriate. They're not going to feel safer by bringing them into a stable, but they may be physically safer. You know, and this is the big thing about fireworks. We've got to address both elements: physical safety, will they harm themselves, and emotional safety. And one isn't more important than the other, you know, which is why we have to try and address both. With horses, physical safety, of course, just as important as emotional safety. And if you think that, well, they're not going to be able to jump out of their stable or smash their way out, then maybe they might be better in a more confined, solid place, rather than a field where they might be able to break out of fencing. But you know what nights these are going to be, because you've checked it out, then you want to be there. You know, again, this is not a time to leave those horses, because you need to know what their responses are. You need to know that that horse isn't trying to jump out over the stable door and has got himself caught up and hanging by his back legs over the door, or actually he has managed to smash his way out through a gate or a door and is now running around. So inconvenient though it may be, really important, at least one person is going to be present on the yard for the display itself, so that we know what the reactions are of those animals. And horses are big animals, and when they get fearful, they can do us a lot of damage, more so than most dogs and cats can. So we probably don't necessarily want to be in the stable with them if they're in a confined space. You know, we just want to be outside and read a book. You know, read a book out loud, you know, something along those lines, so that your voice is there in a calm, reassuring tone. They know you're there. Horses have got an amazing sense of smell too. So again, you could hang up an item of clothing in their stable or on part of the fence, so that they know that your odour's there and you're present too. You know, there are things we can do, you know, with horses too, and exactly the same things we said. Exercise. Don't do fast exercise with the horse, you know, certainly after lunchtime on the day leading up. And maybe take them for a sniffy walk, a browsing hedge wander, scatter some treats outside on the ground, and you know, and let them find them. Pop them in some cardboard boxes with screwed up paper for them to find, so that they can do a nice calm exercise before they're, you know, before the evening, rather than trying to tire them out.
You've mentioned medication. So for those animals which are really in a state of terror, tell us a little bit about the medication side of things.
Yeah, so historically, we used, before we were where we are today, we used to use a lot of sedative medicines. Yeah, sedative medicines being medicines that make animals sleepy, and they change the electrical state of the brain, they change the heart rate and the blood pressure. But that doesn't necessarily guarantee they actually reduce the fear kind of sensation in the animal. So different medicines work in different ways. So when we're thinking about dogs, because we've got the most literature that's been worked on with dogs from this perspective, then you really want to be talking to your vet probably about 2 or 3 main medicines, really. We have something called Sileo, which is a gel. It contains a drug called dexmedetomidine. Not that I expect any of you to remember that, but you might, some of you might be frantically writing down, well, I've tried medicines before, what can I try? The most recent reviews, which have been done in the last year, 18 months, have found Sileo gel to be the most effective of medicines that were given to dogs for fireworks. It's important how it's given. It's given into the mouth, but it has to go on the cheek to be absorbed through the cheek. If it's swallowed into the stomach, then it doesn't work. It has to be absorbed through the mucous membranes. So if you've got a dog who's quite difficult to handle because for a variety of reasons, then this might not be the product for you. If you can't get that syringe end into their mouth and put it here and then just hold their cheek against their mouth so they don't, for a few minutes while it's absorbed, then that's not the drug for you. It's not the medicine for you. But there's pros and cons to everything. It doesn't make dogs sleepy, doesn't have a sedative effect. It works on the fear generating areas of the brain and reduces the activity in them. So it significantly reduces their fear response, but without making them sleepy. Can lower their heart rate and blood pressure. So this is why, you know, a vet will normally ask for a recent check to have been done to make sure we don't believe there to be any problems with their heart or circulatory system. All the medicines that you're going to give to a dog, a cat or a horse need time to work, you know, and typically we're looking at 1 to 2 hours before the first noises or smoke or change is going to occur, so that they've had time to be absorbed at that point. And most of them will last enough hours to get you through one single display. So for a dog, then Sileo gel, definitely. We also have a licensed product called Pexion. Pexion is a medicine actually for epilepsy in dogs. It's a drug called imepitoin. And whilst that's not licensed for use in fireworks, Lincoln University have done a number of studies now looking at its use for dogs in scary situations. And it can be used as a one-off medicine. It comes in a tablet form, which they do swallow. It is absorbed from the tummy, this one, so it can be more effective for dogs who don't like handling around their faces. And again, it doesn't really have any sedation effect. Might make some dogs look a little bit spaced, like they're not quite as with it as normal, but it's not a sedative. It has significant fear reducing properties. We have another drug called trazodone, which some vets like to use. Trazodone can have sedative properties, and there is a little bit of a debate, how much is it a true anti-anxiety medicine? Doesn't work on the same fear parts of the brain that the 2 previous medicines, Sileo and Pexion, do. Works in a different way. So trazodone can work for some dogs, but you do tend to find they're quite sleepy with it. And if they're sleepy, it's hard to know if they're actually feeling less fear or they just can't move effectively. So they're probably the most common ones that we use in dogs. We used to use the diazepam, or, you know, which is Valium and Xanax medicines, and you still can. They do themselves have good anti-fear properties, but they also have sedatory properties as well. So they will make most dogs sleepy. And the biggest problem we have with that category of drugs with dogs is that about a third of dogs, instead of feeling sleepy and relaxed, go crazy. They go when they're on that medicine. And so it's not the medicine to pick up that you're only going to use on one night when there's a massive fireworks display. It's a medicine that you probably want to have trialed in a week or 2 leading up to the event to make sure your dog's not one of those that has this unusual panic response to it. And it will wear off fairly quickly, within maybe an hour or so, but you don't want to give a dog a drug like that, them have that reaction, and now they're bouncing off the walls and going crazy for the duration of the fireworks display. So it's not that. Diazepam, alprazolam, which are Valium and Xanax, aren't good medicines or appropriate medicines for dogs during fireworks, but you want to make sure though the dogs we're giving it to have an appropriate response. That's what's really important about it. Cats, all a lot more complicated, really, because we just have always had so much less data. But the medicine that's been used the most with cats for scary one-off events is gabapentin. Gabapentin has been shown to reduce stress and fear levels in cats undergoing something like a veterinary exam, or traveling in a car. It has quite significant fear-reducing properties, again, without causing sedation. And gabapentin comes in capsule form, so it's fairly easy for you to hide in a treat and give to a cat if necessary. We can use that product for dogs, but we shouldn't by law, unless other products haven't worked, simply because we don't have that as a licensed product for dogs in the UK and many parts of Europe, whereas the other drugs we do, certainly Sileo and Pexion anyway, are licensed for dogs. And vets are supposed to use those drugs first before they move into unlicensed drugs. It's something called the cascade system. So if you've got a dog that hasn't responded to those medicines before, then it's totally understandable why we might add trazodone in, or we might add gabapentin in, perhaps, so that, because we know that that drug doesn't work, in which case it's fine to do it. But the ones that are licensed for the right animal should be prescribed first. And with cats, actually, we don't have at the moment a licensed anti-fear product like we do in dogs. Horses, a little bit trickier. There is another type of sedative gel, which is a bit like Sileo. It will cause some sedation, but it does work on the anti-fear part of the brain. It's called domocedin gel. It's the same category of drug as the Sileo gel for dogs, but it does also have some sedation properties in the majority of horses. And again, it's got to be given into the horse's mouth and be absorbed through that cheek. And there are a lot of horses who are not a big fan of that, so that can be trickier. We can, but that's licensed for horses. So where we can, we often would use that first. We might think about if that product isn't going to work, or you can't administer it to a particular horse because they don't like having stuff put in their mouths like that, then we might be able to use a product like gabapentin. Gabapentin, unfortunately, is not as well absorbed from a horse's stomach as it is from a dog's stomach, so we often have to use higher doses, but that's something you can chat to your equine vet about. What about complementary therapies? I know you're probably going to want to ask me that, and other people are thinking about this. Is there anything else I could use that's not a drug? If your dog is terrified of fireworks, or your cat is, or your horse is, please speak to your vet. These drugs work best. There has been a study that was done last year that looked at various drugs, various complementary treatments, various kind of handling techniques or touch systems, and basically found that the drugs work best, particularly Sileo gel. And actually the complementary treatments, none of them really had any effect whatsoever. And they looked at quite a lot, and I think that is true. I think sometimes when we give stuff like that to our pets, it helps us feel better, helps us feel like we've done something. We hope it'll work, so we're more optimistic, we're calmer, and that rubs off on our pets. The calmer we are, the calmer our pets will be. That doesn't mean to say you shouldn't try them, and there are a whole variety of things, from the homeopathic remedies to essential oil remedies to herbal remedies, which can be tried, but do seek professional advice about that, because particularly with the essential oils and the herbs, they do work within the body to do stuff. They do affect the gut bugs, they may affect blood pressure, they do affect the chemicals in the brain, just not as strongly as medicines do, and therefore they typically don't work as effectively. But you want to make sure that they're not going to have a negative impact on your pet and their health status. And with essential oils, both for cats and dogs and horses, they're super strong. You think if you open a bottle of essential oils and whoa, how strong that smells. Well, remember that your pet's got a way better sense of smell than you have, and it can be really overpowering. So if you're going to think about going down that route, and I think if we've got a mild to moderate fear, it can be helpful. Just make sure there needs to be the opportunity for the animal to move away. Don't put it on a bandana that they're wearing. Don't put it on the harness or a vest. don't have it on their bed, which is the place where they want to sit. It should be on a cloth, or perhaps even an open bottle that's to one side that they can easily move away from. But do seek professional advice on that. Don't just go to a shop and buy an essential oil because you've heard that lavender is good, because actually for the majority of animals it probably isn't, and it can kind of make them feel really quite nauseous. And again, if you're nauseous at the time of fireworks, oh, that's going to feel awful, isn't it, really? So it's not, don't try complementary therapies, but if you've got a moderate to intense fear in an animal, please speak to your vet about medicines, as part of your approach. If you've got a mild to lower moderate fear, then complementary therapies, environmental change may help, but just make sure that the animal has got the choice of moving away from them, and you have sought professional assistance about them and the doses.
Okay, we get through the main night.
Yes.
We've then got weeks of unpredictable fireworks going off, and then it settles down a little bit, and then we've got New Year's Day, but we kind of know what to do now in terms of preparation during this period. New year, fresh start. How can we help our dogs, cats, horses overcome this, what really is like a phobia now, of explosive sounds?
Yeah. Seek professional advice. That's the important thing. Work with a qualified professional. Ideally, particularly if you've got an animal with an almost phobic response, and phobic is where it's disproportional to the fear, like they'd throw themselves out of a glass window to escape the loud noise, even though the loud noise is not going to do them any harm. It's scary to hear a loud noise, and maybe it hurts a bit if you've got pain in your body, but that isn't, you're going to injure yourself way more by throwing yourself out of a glass window. That's what we mean by a phobic response. And absolutely, some animals have phobic responses to noises. Sometimes it's just, not just, but it's an intense fear response, which is in proportion to the loud noise, that when it's going on, but then they'll calm down quite quickly. But it's really important that we address that properly. And this isn't just about training. So if we rewind and we remember that a significant portion of dogs develop these kind of noise phobic responses because of pain in their body, then we've got to address that pain. You're going to waste a lot of time if you start just hearing a noise, give them a treat, hearing a noise, give them a treat, if they've still got pain in their body. So it's really important that ideally, if you've got a quite fearful animal, a phobic animal, that you seek assistance from a clinical animal behaviorist. And then we have organisations like the APBC, Association of Pet Behaviour Counsellors, and the International Association of Animal Behaviour Consultants, IAABC, which have registers about clinical behaviourists, which are good places to go to. It's not that your local dog trainer might not be able to help you, but we've got to remember there's lots of pieces to the puzzle. And the important thing is that we make sure that we've addressed multiple pieces of the puzzle before we think about training. Is the dog actually out of pain? Is the dog's gut healthy? Is the dog able to sleep effectively? And once we've considered those elements, is the brain now ready for new learning? And we would often start with learning some other things that aren't related to noises, other new things, before we might start going into noises themselves. And people often start thinking about using recorded sounds. They might use them on an app on their phone, or they might buy a CD, if people even remember what a CD is anymore. So there are those discs that you can put in things. I mean, I don't know what, because laptops don't even have hard drives anymore to put them in. Some of us might have such a thing in our house, a CD player, but you can put them on your smart TV, all these things that play noises and sounds, but they're recorded in our hearing range. They're not recorded in the width and breadth of hearing that a cat or a dog or a horse hears them. So they have huge limitations. And that doesn't mean to say they're not valuable, but they're only part of a puzzle. So, often when I've got a dog, a cat or a horse that's ready to start learning new things about sound, because we've checked out their health, we've ruled out pain, they're sleeping well, we've done a little bit of kind of meeting new sights and smells, so the animal feels really positive about new things, then we might start with that. You know, a noise which doesn't bother them in the slightest, but a noise is going to be the predictor of something good coming. You know, and we're going to climb up a ladder of noises, and we're going to do a funny thing. We're going to climb up the ladder, and we're going to climb back down the ladder, and we're going to climb up the ladder, and we're going to climb back down the ladder, and we're going to get them used to a variety of different noises, not just ones that are about fireworks. You know, and we need to do that in a very strategic way. And the kind of noises we use are very, very individual to the individual pets and their issue. You know, even when it's about fireworks. Because actually the majority of dogs who have fireworks phobias actually might be whistle sensitive, or like you said about Teddy, they might be loud noise sensitive when it comes to a car door slamming, or gunshot sensitive. And you know, we want to, with this kind of program, we want to encompass all of that, and we should be thinking about what the features are that might be common in those sounds. Is it the whistles? Is it the pops? Is it the bangs? Is it the static sound behind it? And there's so many things you know, which can create the noise which is an issue for them as an individual. And so that's why we have to tailor that pattern. And I only mention the recordings because it's common for people to think, oh, if I play that, if I get to January, February and I start playing that every day, my dog, cat, horse will learn that sounds okay, isn't it? And actually no, that it needs a more structured approach than that. It needs to be the predictor of something good, not just something neutral. It's what we call counter conditioning. But equally, we have to think about the noise itself, because the recordings can be part of the things that we use on our ladder, but they're never going to be the whole thing, because they're not recorded in the same sound. It's not the same sound an animal will actually hear when a rocket goes off, you know, and that's important. And then just thinking about that, we didn't talk about noises on the night, did we? Things you can do on the night that might help disguise some of those noises. If you've got a very fearful animal, then one of the things you might want to think, I now have a two-pronged approach, if I'm honest. I think about having one stereo in the room, one speaker in the room, whatever, that's playing white noise, that's just a constant low for the ear, you know, that static sound, which is, I mean, there's so many of them available. It can be waves on a beach, you know, or it can be low-level thunder in a rainforest. Your dog's not fearful of thunder in a rainforest, but there's something there, it's what we call white noise, you know, like the sound that you hear when you're on an aeroplane, if you remember ever going on an aeroplane. You know, and that basically that has a very specific impact on the ear into the brain, because it's a constant noise at a constant level. And then you probably want to use some other noise, some other music which has a regular beat. Yeah, if you just use Coronation Street or EastEnders, disaster, because they shout really loudly and then they stop. And so you get these bursts of sound, you know, which can distract from pop, 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 and then they go silent, you know, and then in the silence, guess what happens? Boom! So, you know, you want something there that's a constant, and it's better to have like a low constant in the background, or not really, really loud, but it's just there. Because then, you know, when our music, our reggae, pop, soft rock music, which has got a regular drum and bass kind of beat to it, you know, does fade off for some reason, unexpected reason, there's still something constant in the background. But also it's about choice. Make sure that the animal's not shut in a space where there's that sound present, because if they'd rather go and bury their head somewhere they feel is silent and deal with it that way, then that needs to be their choice.
Made me think about is it last year or the year before, maybe they're doing it every year now, but I think it was Classic FM, where on fireworks night having music for dogs.
Yes.
So yeah, it's
you get channels like that, can't you now, and recordings like that. But just listen to them in advance and think, are there gaps between the different pieces of music? You know, how long does the excerpt that you've picked last for? You know, I mean, obviously nowadays, if you're listening to it through some device, you can loop it, and the looping normally there isn't any change. But of course, if there's a fade out and a fade in, you know, you don't want that to happen at the loudest element. So just make sure you're aware what kind of piece of music you're picking, or what channel it is you're going to put on, so that you ideally you don't get this. There's plenty of sound. Oh, it's disappeared for 2 minutes while somebody talks with no other sound, because you can guarantee that's when pop 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 will happen. And of course, if you're trying to mask the sound from being noticed, then that's not going to be very helpful.
Well, something that you really made me think about is that if your dog has normally been fine with fireworks and suddenly they're not fine with fireworks, I now would be going to my vet immediately, because I would be wanting to check whether there was something amiss that I didn't know about that's made him feel more vulnerable during this period. So that's huge to have that bit of information. Yeah, that's quite a big thing.
It's big, and also just have a little sympathy for your vet, because your dog still can't talk, your cat still can't talk, and you bring your pet in and you say to me, well, they're just not themselves, and I'm thinking, I need something more here. So it might not be something you can get to the bottom of in one consultation. It might be you go in, have a chat, the vet might be able to do a general examination to check there's no obvious source of pain, but neck pain, dental pain, pain inside, these things can wax and wane. And my son, as an example, last night he said his ear really hurt, and then he didn't mention it again all night. And then he woke up this morning, didn't mention it for half an hour, and then he suddenly said to me, "Mummy, my ear really hurts again." And we chatted about it for a few minutes. My ear hurts, and then it never got mentioned again. And I have no doubt, because he never says his ear hurts, that he's getting the start of either a post-viral ear inflammation or the start of an ear infection or something like that. He went swimming at the weekend, so maybe he's got water in his, it's brewing a low-grade infection, but it's coming and it's going. And of course, if we've got a dog or a cat or a horse who's got a little bit of intermittent head pain or a little bit of intermittent neck pain, it can be really hard for us to find it. So, just be aware of that. And of course, when a vet says, well, I can't find anything, then that doesn't necessarily still mean it's not there. And the best thing then is just keep observing, keep recording, as in take video recordings, but keep a diary. Is anything changing? Are there things that they can do that they couldn't do? I saw a lady just the other day with an older Labrador, and she said, "Oh, dog's just not right." And she said, "But that's why I'm here." She said, "Because I know it's just not like her to she's just not right. She's what was the main thing with her? I think she just said she's just not herself. She's she's panting occasionally a little bit, and she's just not herself." And so we chatted about it, and I was like, oh, okay, well, that's a big thing. So we talked about various elements of the dog's life, and one of the things I said to her was, just a typical movement related question: can she still get in and out of the car okay? Can she still get on and off the sofa okay? Does she still go up and down stairs? Has she ever gone up and down stairs? And at that point she said to me, "Oh, actually, now you say that, I've just realized we have noticed something. She doesn't come up and down the stairs in the day." She said, "And I haven't thought about it." She said she always used to. She's always been quite thingy. And so if I go to the bathroom upstairs or I go to put some washing away, she always used to come up and down the stairs. And she says now she doesn't do that anymore. She waits for me at the bottom of the stairs. But she said, the reason I haven't thought about it is because she still comes up to bed. So when we go to bed, she still comes up the stairs. Now I think about it, in the morning, when it's time to come down the stairs, I have to call her down. Whereas I never had to do that before. So she's hesitating about going up and down the stairs, and she's making a choice not to do it very frequently anymore. That's huge, and I found pain in that dog's pelvis, quite significant pain in the lower back and pelvis area. So we've started on a trial of medicine for that specific pain. And if that improves, then we'll look into physiotherapy and other modalities to kind of focus on that area. But, sometimes it can take, maybe a few sessions or a few weeks and different observations to know, what's going on. The same with gut health as well. Are they intermittently being sick, eating a lot of grass, passing intermittently soft, hard to pick up with a poo bag poos? And that can be really valuable to have a record of that, because it isn't something necessarily a vet can just feel their gut and go, oh, I know what it is.
Exactly. And I'm sure many of us who have dogs have been in this position, or cats for that matter, where you just know, because you know them so well, you know that they're not, but you can't put your finger on, and we've all been there. So observation is always the thing. Well, Amber, I just want to thank you so much for talking to us on Pet Talk today. I just wish you lived closer so that you could be Teddy's vet.
Teddy has a wonderful vet, I have no doubt.
I mean, actually, you know, I do love my vet, but from the day I first met you, I wished you were my vet. Teddy's vet.
Oh, that's super kind. So, there are great vets out there, but you know, sometimes we have to build our relationship, and COVID's made that tricky too, hasn't it, really? And yeah, but it's about meaningful observation, keeping a diary, you know, writing down your questions so you don't get flustered at the time when you go to see someone, ask them something. You know, all those things can really help, you know, improve the communication between yourself and a professional. You know, so yeah, and just keep asking those questions and looking for reputable professional advice. That's the thing. But there's so much that we can do to improve things for our dogs who are scared of fireworks, and our cats and our horses. And we haven't talked about them, but because so much else to talk about, but rabbits and guinea pigs, they should be coming in from the garden. You know, maybe tortoises too, if a few of you have got those as well. You know, think about those little furry animals as well. The rabbit will be terrified outside in the hut if the neighbours are having fireworks. So you need to bring that rabbit inside.
And also, I imagine that if any of us have birds as part of the family, you know, to be sensitive to them as well, because they're not going to appreciate explosions going on outside either.
No, any animal isn't, are they?
Nobody does except us.
Well, and how many of, I mean, I'm talking to the wrong person there, because I am really bad with fireworks. I have a real loud noise, almost phobia. And I've got better over many years by gradual exposure and pairing it with nice things and looking at the underlying causes. But you wouldn't get me at a fireworks display, because I don't like the loud noises. If it was a silent one, I would go. It's the noise. So actually, I think, you know, a lot of us can empathize, can't we, with that? And particularly children as well, as I mentioned earlier, children whose ear structure or sensitivity, if that's the right term, really, you know, may be more like some of our younger animals in particular, or animals in general. We're not quite clear. They hear sounds different to us, you know, and so, yeah, we might think that they're great fun, but actually our children and our pets, our animals, often don't think that at all. So,
well, one good news in the midst of all of this,
yes,
is I noticed a friend posting on Facebook yesterday that there are silent fireworks now available in some of the supermarkets.
Yeah.
So we could all be helping by choosing to use those as well. And so there it is. Well, Amber, if people wanted to read your wonderful articles or get in touch with you, how could they do that?
I have a Facebook page, which is called Understand, ending in a D, Understand Animals. There's a picture of a black and white dog, a bull terrier, and some horses on that. So hopefully you would find it fairly easily. And yeah, I'll be sharing a bit more fireworks advice, as well as the link to this chat on there in the next couple of weeks, so to try and help more. But yeah, that would be great if you want to come and have a listen, ask questions, and you can use that page.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us on Pet Talk today.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you all for watching. Do subscribe and like this talk, and subscribe to the channel so that you can have access to more wonderful interviews. And next time, we're going to be talking about walks with our dogs and how they enhance and enrich our lives. Until then, goodbye.